My love's a strong foundation, built on solid ground. No matter where you run, no matter where you hide, no matter what you've done, my love for you will still abide. You remain the only one. I'll keep a place for you by my side. I want you to be happy, even if it isn't with me. I want you to be happy, so I'll set you free. I want you to be happy. One day I hope you'll see, real love needs no lock and key. I want you to be happy. It isn't love if you are free. No matter where you run, no matter where you hide, no matter what you've done, my love for you will still abide. You remain the only one. I'll keep a place for you by my side. I don't want you to walk away, but I won't force you to stay. I'd rather you be happy, I'd rather you be free, even if it's without me. No lock and key. I want you to be happy. It isn't love if you aren't free. I'd rather you be free, even if it's without me.
Fairy tale marketing, make your brand story sing. Sell your brand with your story, show your customers their glory. Appeal to the heart, that's where memories start. Let them know what you can do to make their happily ever after true. With fairy tale marketing, they'll never forget. Fairy tale marketing, it's a sure bet. Fairy tale marketing. Fairy tale marketing, make your brand story sing. Sell your brand with your story, show your customers their glory. Appeal to the heart, that's where memories start. Let them know what you can do to make their happily ever after true. With fairy tale marketing, they'll never forget. Fairy tale marketing, it's a sure bet. Fairy tale marketing, they'll never forget. It's a sure bet. Fairy tale marketing, never forget. It's a sure bet. Fairy tale marketing. Tempted by a devil's kiss, promising unending bliss. Drag me into an abyss. Hypnotized by your eyes, desire you can't disguise. Seduced by your lies. king when it comes to Brandy. Build your brand, don't make it bland. Take the first and show them why your brand begins with you. Everything you say and do, sharing your heart is true, will bring customers to you. Build your brand, don't make it bland. Go first and show them why your brand.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get back to our regularly scheduled program of working on Rise of the Technosavior album. And this is where we left off with our artwork. And therefore, where we will be beginning. We are going to continue our work on Mr. Technosavior. Getting him literally fleshed out. At least half of him anyway. He is a hybrid creature, part man, part robot, which is why we're splitting it. And yes, we are having some internet issues, so please be patient if things flicker in and out. It's the life I live. Sometimes it goes really, really well and everything's working perfectly, and sometimes, well, sometimes we get a chance to embrace the suck. And that might be tonight, and we're okay with that. So. Oh! Well, that's not cool. Okay, hold on, guys. Let me, flip back over here and turn that off. And wait, that shouldn't be theme music. There's no reason why the theme music should be playing. That also shouldn't be the case. So I'm not sure why you're seeing that or hearing that. Unless there's some kind of delay. Because, I've literally got the... Yeah. I'm just double checking to make sure that I have turned off the audio. Not the audio, but the music. Okay. Hey! Yes, the interweb is being stupid tonight. Hi, Malachi. Good to see you. Glad to see you here. Hopefully we will not have too many interweb issues tonight. It may very well be that we do, but we'll just have to embrace the suck and make our way through them. All right. This bad boy is looking, well, he's looking pretty fine right now. We're going to give his human half some more definition. I'm going to thicken that line a bit. How are things going for you, Malachi? In that frozen north. Well, even more frozen than our north. Right now, we're not really frozen. We're wet. We've had rain pretty much all day. I don't mind it. We need the moisture, but it has kept our little Mia girl. She was homesick today, so. But to prevent her from being totally bored and annihilated, I did take her on a walk over to the goose pond that we have nearby. And goose and duck out the wazoo gather there, and she was enjoying herself quite a bit. But I didn't stay for very long. Something just told me to come on home. I'm glad that I did, because shortly afterward it started raining pretty solidly. So, but we got her home without incident. She wasn't soaking wet or anything. But yeah, that's what weather we're having, is wet, rainy, and cool. Not cold, but definitely cool. I actually want to put that neck underneath his head because it'll give me a chance to work on it independently of the beard. Kind of outline it with the lasso tool, grab it, and move it to its own layer. Yep, we embrace the suck wholeheartedly in this family. If we did not, mentally, it would be impossible to deal with what we go through sometimes. And that's not a pity party for us, because I don't really feel any pity for us. It's just, there are some things that are a little bit difficult about our lives. But they are more than made up for by the things we learn by going through those difficulties. And honestly wouldn't trade our lives for anybody else's. Is it hard? Yes. But some of the hardness has come because of the choices of how we've made, the choices we made about the lifestyle we want to live and the priorities we hold and how we want to reflect those priorities. And so money is not my greatest priority, and that does present quite often some difficulties. But I'd still rather prioritize people over money every day of the week and 6 times on Sundays. Because I just think that's the right way to live. It was snowing off and on. Today, the weather's a chill 28 degrees. Ooh. Yeah. That is a bit nippy there, Malachi. Just a bit nippy. First time that I had to choose between finances and people, I was 28, and my husband was coming up on his graduation from radio school, which was his dream, to become a radio DJ. And at the same time, the year prior, toward the end of the year, my son, who was 7 at the time, had literally been standing in my room telling me not only that he was going to kill himself, but exactly how he was going to do it. And he had a backup plan in case the first plan didn't work. You know, so that's going to make you feel like you're parent of the year. But in that moment, I was like, what have we done to break this baby so badly that death seems preferable to life? Like, how does a 7-year-old come up with death as the conclusion for all the problems he's facing? And, you know, at the time that it happened, I didn't really know the answer, but it set me on a search for the answer, which led me back into the church, not by intention, but it just was how it worked out. But at any rate, so at this point in time, my husband's about to graduate. Now, the only way for him to have a shot, really, at building a radio career is to enter a small market. And we were living in the DFW Metroplex, which is not a small market. It is, in fact, a top 10 market, I think. And so we were going to have to move. But at the same time that came through, I got an offer from the vice president of my division to move to Florida, Orlando specifically, to work directly for her. She wanted me to be her assistant, essentially. And it would have been more money, significantly more. And, you know, at the time, that was tempting. But what I looked at was I was already working 80 hours a week, sometimes 60 to 80, and not really having the time to devote to my son. And then on top of that, that would mean forcing Randy to give up his dream that he had just spent 9 months working toward. And I decided, you know what? Family first. And instead of accepting the promotion, I ended up turning in my resignation. We worked to find Randy a job in a small market. We moved to Gillette, Wyoming, and I left that career behind. And I have never, ever, not even once, regretted the decision. Did it cost me money? Yes. But what was more valuable that came out of that whole thing, it actually ended up being a very healing thing for my son, which is not normally the case. Normally, if you take a kid who's already feeling suicidal and you move them away from everything they've ever known in life. And that's exactly what we did. We moved him across the country from everything and everyone he'd ever known in his whole life. That normally does not help anything. In fact, usually it will produce the exact opposite of healing. It will lead them even further down that path of suicidal ideation because you've just kicked the support out from underneath them. But in our son's case, what happened was because I was no longer working full-time, I was focused on going to school to become an elementary educator. What happened was that I was now home to help him get to know people in the neighborhood and do something he'd never done, which is make friends with other kids his own age in the neighborhood. And I didn't really realize that that was part of the missing component in his life, was we were it, and we were at each other's throats, usually, quite often, sadly. We were not a happily married couple. We were friends, but sometimes we would forget that in the process of our arguments. And we were a deeply divided couple with a lot of communication issues and a lot of issues getting along. And so our son was often felt caught in between the middle of the two of us and didn't have anybody else to go to. And I think that was part of what was driving that feeling of wanting to die. He was so miserable and had nowhere to take that misery. So that choice to put my family ahead of my career may not have resulted in me making more money in life, but it resulted in a son who is still alive and kicking, and a much better marriage than I ever dreamt we could have, and a lot of other positive moves came out of that. So no regrets, none whatsoever. And I think sometimes we put too much emphasis on money and not enough on relationships and people. So that's where my philosophy comes from, is out of my own lived experience. Because up until that point in my life, I had been working so hard because I thought that what my son needed from me was stuff. You know, I thought if I could give him just the right home, the right, school, the right clothes, the right stuff, that everything would be fine. And his statement to me at age 7 just tapped the brakes on that hard and showed me that it wasn't about the stuff. It was about showing him love in a way that he could receive it. And which I had not been really good at doing. I was working so much, and then I would come home and I would be really too tired to give him the attention and the affection that he desperately needed. And that was something else that got freed when I quit my corporate job. Was my time and my ability to give him the attention he needed and to be present for him in a way that was meaningful to him. Because sometimes you can love a person all you want, but if that love isn't given in a way that they can receive it, it's pointless. It doesn't really matter. And of course, that was a life lesson I had to learn too. It doesn't matter how much you love somebody. What matters is, are they receiving the love that you're trying to give them? Sometimes that is a you problem. Sometimes it's your failure to communicate in a way that's meaningful to them. And sometimes it's literally their capacity is broken. Something inside of them, some event in the past has shattered their capacity to receive love in a meaningful way. And the only thing you can do for that person is serious levels of prayer. And to keep pouring out the love to the best of your ability. They may never be able to receive it the way that you're trying to give it, but they may never be able to receive it at all. Some people never do open up. But as long as you're continuing to try, at least you know it's not on you. I mean, I know a lot about I came from a background that made it very, very difficult initially for me to receive love at all. It's partly because when I was like 4, my parents got a divorce. And my dad was a paranoid schizophrenic, something a 4-year-old doesn't really understand what that means in real terms. And my mom and he were both convinced that my life would be better if he just weren't part of it. So my dad took off for Mississippi, where his family lived. And I didn't see him again until I was 24. And 4-year-old little me wrote a story in her head that explained why he left and didn't come back. And that story read, "I am not lovable." And so when you believe you're not lovable, it makes it just really hard to receive love from anybody. Because you don't trust that it's authentic or genuine or possible even. So you'll do all kinds of broken crap because, well, you just expect them to eventually abandon you anyway. Push them away, you'll do all kinds of things that are crazy. But that's what happens when you let a wounded 4-year-old be the driver in your life. Nobody puts a 4-year-old in charge of driving their car, but A lot of us put 4-year-olds, wounded 4-year-olds at that, in charge of making the most important decisions in our life, not because we know that we're doing that, but because we don't realize that that child's story is what's driving the decisions we make. So that's where I was at for sure. Naturally, that filtered into some insane parenting decisions when Eddie was young. Things I would never do today. But we live, we learn, hopefully, and we grow. Ideally. We'll decide later whether we want to keep the beard or not. I put it on its own layer, so I had the option. And right now I'm naming the layers so that I know what's what when I go to mess with them later. It's really something you want to get in the habit of doing if you're a digital artist, is to label your layers. Keep things as segregated as possible so you can manipulate individual layers when you need to without messing with other parts of it that you don't want messed with. But overall, like, I really should move the hair layer to its own. I'm not going to at this point, but I should. Let's take that up. When you've got black hair, a lot of times the actual highlights come off as kind of blue instead of white, like you would expect almost. So plus it just matches the other colors that we've got in the scene. Alrighty, Mr. Man, his neck and his face are done. The beard is done. I'm going to add his crown. Ooh! Nice! Nice, Malachi. Bet you Birdman appreciates that. I'm going to drop the size down about half of that. Seems to, yeah. The internet, my husband, Ubi was telling me, got a few more to do for him. Yeah. Have I used Nano Banana? No, I have not. But that sounds interesting. I'll have to check that out, Benjamin. Ubi says he's about to eat an actual banana. Does that count? No, I don't really think so, but you know. Nice try. Solid A for, or E for effort. Let's make that brush stroke smaller, maybe about half of what I gave it initially. And then we'll half it again and add in our highlight. What I have been trying out is Affinity, which is free to use for graphic, for any purpose really that's digital art related. And I'm kind of learning my way around it. It seems to play very similarly to what Photoshop and Illustrator and InDesign do. Those are my three main tools that I use, along with Premiere and what is the other one? Recording one. Audition. I am looking to find something that can replace Creative Cloud, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. $70 a month may not sound like much to some people, but right now it's quite a substantial amount for Ubi and I. And if I can find something that'll do a better job, I'll happily stop working over that money. But we have been using Creative Cloud for years now. So it's not a small transition. It's just they've kind of priced themselves out of our range. You know, I don't blame them. If I had a great tool, I might want to charge a lot for it too. I don't blame anybody for wanting to charge a decent amount. It's just whether I can afford it or want to put in the effort to afford it. Because it is a significant stress factor when you've got tools you rely on that you can't really afford. But that is our issue and nobody else's. Very nice. Very nice, Malachi. That should help boost you. It's always cool when you can collaborate with other people. I was proud of the fact that today I finished the actual pick guard blank, getting it cut out and shaped properly so that I can add the vinyl, so I can add the artwork, so I can get that actually done. And then Ubi, of course, is going to do the electronics part for me. And kind of tossing around the idea of maybe making it a Santa giveaway for Ubi's channel when it's done. Find somebody who needs a guitar and maybe can't afford one, or has dreamed of having a guitar and can't afford one right now on their budget, and make it a Santa special. Is the preliminary hope. Love to see somebody who can't, a lot of our guys on our channel are like guitar collectors and they have like 1 million guitars. So one more guitar is not going to do much for them. But for somebody who's been dreaming of having an electric guitar and couldn't afford one, it might be a difference maker for them. Oh, that'll be awesome for you. That'd be great, Malachi. Getting your work out there and having other people actually appreciating and valuing it. That is that's the one thing as an artist that I really aspire toward is having people appreciate and value the artwork I do, or the writing that I do, or anything else that I create. Because let's be honest, nobody creates it just to hoard it, really. They create it so that it benefits people, so that it gets visibility. Yeah. But, and of course, I'm not 100% altruistic. I recognize that guitar giveaways, especially when you're targeting somebody who's maybe not had a guitar but has had a guitar dream, you're likely to start pulling in viewers that you wouldn't have pulled in otherwise. So yeah, I'm not entirely altruistic. I do think about how doing for others can benefit us too. I'm more of a win-win kind of girl. I like to look for ways that everybody gets fed. That helping others comes back to help us too. Now, I'm not above doing things purely to help somebody else with no intention of gain, because I recognize that every time you do that, you are actually sowing the seeds of your own future success, and you're making it more likely that you're going to get what you want out of life. But I'm also not 100% altruistic. Exactly. Malachi, that's exactly what we want to do. Is, I want to see somebody who's had a dream for a long time of playing an electric guitar and will use it. That's my preference. And all that's standing in their way is the ability to buy one. And, that's kind of our dream, is to do for someone else what basically was done for Ubi, which is he was already streaming and doing his best to live a rock dream on an acoustic guitar, which, that's a challenge in and of itself. But he was showing that he was willing to take the strides it took to live his dream, even if he had to figure out the tech for it to make it work. So I want to take somebody who's doing their best to live the dream and just needs that nudge in the right direction. Just needs that one thing. And if we can give them something that is not only playable, but also beautiful at the same time, that is our goal. I want it to inspire hope in them every time they pick that guitar up. Because that's what beauty does. It inspires hope. And reminds people that there's greater things in life than the momentary darkness of the day. And right now, I personally believe a lot of people are in need of hope. Could be wrong, could be just me. But that's how I see it. Yes, I believe in symbiotic relationships. My belief is that the best relationships come when both people are giving 100%. Both people are working toward a similar or same objective and are willing to give it everything, you know? That's when the magic happens. But, like I said, I also recognize there is value in giving without any expectation of receiving anything. Because you'll always get something back. It just may not be from the person you initially gave it to. And even if all you get is a skill gain, that's still something. But yeah. I don't know that too many people are going to need a pick guard that's decorated, but I do have the process of this whole thing, create an entire artwork of pick guard, but it wasn't going to work for what we had, so I had to start over. And that led to us ordering the pick guard blank, and today I realized, wow, okay, in the process of making this pick guard work from a blank, I've really learned some skills that I could use toward wood carving, which is interesting. I never thought of myself or saw myself as somebody who would get involved in wood carving, but I may give it a try because this has kind of emboldened me since the very similar techniques are used. And of course, that's one step away from actually carving my own guitar, which would be an interesting project to take on. You know, I wonder if I am making a slight error in judgment here. Let's do that. Let's follow our instinct. My instinct is that the crown should be gold right up until it reaches the cyborg portion, and then it should be that blue and maybe circuit-like. Maybe more like a circuit board. Some days it's 50-50, others might be 30-70. It's not to protect. Exactly correct. Too many people get caught up in transactional relationships, and they're only willing to give as much as they get. And that serves to a certain degree, but it's also very limiting. I mean, it really does basically reduce your relationships to nothing more than a transaction, which is kind of sad if you think about it. I don't want my relationships to be a transaction. I don't want to be constantly measuring, did you give me as much as I got, or as I gave? I don't think there's any freedom in that kind of relationship. I think that's a relationship that tends to create a lot of tension and a lot of fear, and just really stresses you out. So like I said, I'm a big believer in more, yes, look for symbiosis, yes, look for everybody eating, but at the same time, don't be afraid to give, even when you're not receiving. Even when things aren't going the way you'd like them to. Just not be afraid. Of being more generous than the other person. Because it'll come around to you eventually. You know, it may be somebody who saw what you did and is inspired by it, or it may be just that God decides to bless you extra because he saw what you did. But it will come back to you. That was the hardest lesson for me to learn. I used to be very, very transactional in my relationships. If I wasn't 100% confident I was going to get something back from you, I wasn't going to give. And I was always the kind of person who was like, okay, you've given, but what have you done for me lately? I was basically a cat. And I'm glad that I learned better, and I'm glad that I'm not that person anymore. I don't really like that person that I was once upon a time, but I can acknowledge that she existed. She very much did. And, you know, as I've gotten older and wiser, she appears less and less, but I won't lie and say that she never shows up to the party. It's just that I shut her down in a pretty good hurry when she does. Because I am not about to let her control my life or my relationships anymore. Don't want. Yep. Well, you are fortunate, sir. If you have never had a relationship like that, you are indeed fortunate. I kind of grew up in a family where that was the relationships we had. It was purely really transactional. I mean, we were only going to give as much as we got. And it was always not what have you done for me, but really kind of what have you done for me lately? Really kind of ugly stuff. And I didn't learn a lot about really being generous until I got to adulthood. And actually, Randy helped me a lot with that because he wasn't afraid to give things. he grew up in a family where, you know, everybody understood that if you give what you have today, somebody else is going to be willing to give to you when you need it down the road. But that wasn't my experience growing up, and I freaked out on him when he was being generous with our stuff at a time when I really felt we didn't have it to give. But like I said, that's part of the benefit of having a partner, is that you can learn things from them that you were not taught growing up. Yeah, I was very much the "what have you done for me lately" girl. Not at all a grateful person, not at all a very nice person. I could fake it for a little while. You would like me when you first met me, and then the real me would come to the forefront eventually, and that would chase away most relationships. Because, well, nobody really wants to deal with that for long. Hey, good night, Glenjamin. Thanks for hanging with us. Definitely appreciate you being here. Definitely appreciate you stepping into the fray. Hope I didn't scare you off. I do have a tendency to do that sometimes, but I don't try to. Cracking you up? Why? I'll have to work on making that look more circuit boardy later. But the concept is there. Even if the execution isn't quite where I want it to be. I don't know. I hope he's doing all right. You're right. He's usually here for this, but I know he hasn't been feeling especially well lately, so I'm hoping he's all right. Definitely been praying for him. I'm going to work on just making that green and gold for right now. I'm just going to wipe out that part. I don't like the way it looks, so just erase that, and then I'm going to work on finding a good sample of a circuit board so that I can add that in there. Yeah, I haven't seen Will in a little while either. You're right. But I think Will has had some family issues going on. It's my understanding. I could be totally wrong, but I think that's what's happened with him. I don't think he's doing as much in the space as he was, just because I think he's got those issues going on, and I don't know what they are because he wasn't specific, so it's hard to know what's going on with somebody. Oh yeah. Oh, I was very much that girl, you know. It's not what have you done, it's a what have you done for me lately. And if I didn't deem it enough, well, I was on to the next thing. Poor Ubi. He got with me back when that was my tune. The amazing thing was he stuck around for that show. I was not a very nice person. And I'm not afraid to own that or admit that. I worked really hard to change it, but I'm not afraid to admit that's where I was. Yeah. There we go. There is one thing I have learned about life, it's this. You cannot be loved for who you are, where you are, exactly as you are, if you lack the courage to own that person. So, I own it. 100%. Good, bad, ugly, and there was plenty of ugly to go around. I was working on a whole ugly festival back when I was younger. And it was all out of that woundedness. Yeah, I pray for Will and Timothy both. I agree. It's just one of those things. I don't know what's going on in their lives. Well, I mean, I know some of what's going on with Timothy, but Will, I don't. But I know what it's like to be going through things and not feel comfortable talking about it. Sometimes you're just so ashamed of it that the thought of even bringing it up to somebody else is just, you're not there. Sometimes you just don't know what to say, so you say nothing. Sometimes you just feel like it would be too much if you did try to explain. So, and I've been all those places. Afraid that people would judge me if I told them the truth about what I was going through. So I said nothing, even though I really could have used help and support and nothing else, somebody to talk to. So I sincerely hope that anybody who's watching this video, if that is your case, if that is what is going on in your life, where you don't feel like you've got anybody you can talk to, well, reach out, because I promise you, I've been there too. And it's an awful place to be in when you just think you are all alone in it and have got nobody you could confide in. No, actually, I do not have HBO. We actually don't have cable of anything. We have Amazon, but I choose not to pay for that subscription because, well, quite frankly, our money is stretched thin enough as it is, and HBO really doesn't have anything that I care about watching, generally speaking. Now, they might have here and there something, but there's nothing they produced in a while that's been something that compelled me to want to pay them. What is it, like $16 a month just for their channel? Which I'm like, yeah, okay. Cool story, bro. I'm struggling to do what I gotta do with the bills that I've got, let alone add you to the mix. Plus, I don't actually watch a lot of television, period. I usually have a pretty full schedule, and it doesn't leave a lot of room for jumping on the tube. Like, Mia Jane's, our granddaughter, her primary after-school care, and also when she's sick, we are the primary daycare. So, that means that I have to manage my time really effectively so that I get the work that I'm needing to do done and still take care of her. Which, as you might imagine, is a bit of a challenge. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I love that girl so much. It is impossible to just even explain how much that little girl means to me. And it isn't that I don't love my son or my husband or any of my other family members, but there is just something different with her. Hi, Griffin. I have no idea why it has only 2 viewers. I try not to take it personally. I'm not really known in the community, so it doesn't entirely surprise me then. I'm like, I had somebody tell me one time, this was way back in like 2016. Yeah, actually it was 2016. They're like, you are the best kept secret on the internet. Why is that? Like, good question. Why is that? And he did not mean it as a compliment. He was like, you need to get yourself out there more, girl. Which I couldn't argue with him. I really did. And this year I'm actually taking steps to do so. So that is part of it, is that I have not been really focused on visibility until this year. And then I decided, you know what? being the best kept secret on the internet, just not worth it. I can't help anybody that way. It's about $15 a month for most apps. Yeah, no kidding. And really, honestly, I don't know. To me, it's not money well spent. It's kind of like, I don't really want to waste my money on garbage. And a lot of the shows they produce these days are pretty garbage. I'm not saying they all are, but there's a pretty high garbage to good stuff ratio. I think a lot of it has to do with people no longer understanding the significance of having real heroes and real villains and what makes the two different from one another. And once you lose sight of a real hero and a real villain, what you've got are two people competing for their goals and nobody to really root for. Because why should I care whether one jerk achieves their objective versus another jerk? And that's the reality. Well, I am becoming well known in your guitar community, but realize that has only happened because I started showing up and letting myself be known and be seen. Prior to this year, even prior, I guess, really, I think I wasn't really showing up much to even Ubi's streams probably until April or May. And then his was the only stream I initially participated in, and I didn't really do anything with my own channel. And then slowly I have worked on getting up the courage to kind of like do my own thing in addition to collaborating with him on certain things. And, you know, kind of showing people what I got. Can't blame people for not showing up if they don't know you exist. And that is all on me, brother. All on me. Because believe it or not, there's a large part of me that's still an insecure wreck. I'm just working my way through being an insecure wreck. And I'm honest about it. Welcome to dairy. I despise and loathe it. And I have since I was about 13 years old. It is actually the series that caused me to stop having anything to do with Stephen King. True facts. And that's no reflection on anybody who happens to like the series. You know, everybody's got their own taste, and I don't hold that against anybody. It's just, for me personally, his story was way too over the top when it came to, I mean, sexualizing 11 and 13-year-olds. I really didn't want that. I'd been molested as a kid, and the last thing I wanted was to read a story about that. And I figured the kind of person that wrote that story wasn't the kind of person I really wanted to be reading anymore. So that's when I quit on Stephen King and wrote him off my list of authors I would read. And that's why because it really kind of affected me personally. Like more to the point, it like tapped into something that was going on in my life, and I didn't, in a very negative way. So I was not cool with it, no sure. But I also can understand why some people really like his writing. I used to be a huge fan of his. I read almost everything he wrote. Up until after It. It was the last thing that I really read of his. Now, of his movies, I feel like The Shining in the 1970s was actually the closest to getting his kind of horror right, even though, ironically, Stephen King would tell you that was the worst version of his novels. He hated what Stanley Kubrick did to his book. Because Stanley Kubrick was very much somebody who didn't buy into supernatural anything. So he really ripped the supernatural heart out of the book and inserted a lot of stuff that you have to really get close to really understand what was going on in that. He was putting a lot in there that wasn't from Stephen King. But is this? Oh. Yeah, okay, so here we go. Yeah, it wasn't even the stealing the killers away. It wasn't the fact that he was killing kids. I mean, that would have been one thing. It was how those particular kids got out of their predicament initially that really bugged me. Like, I don't need 11 and 13-year-olds having an orgy. That's just not necessary in my estimation. And so it really bothered me that he put that in there. And yeah, I just, like, after that, I just lost all respect for him as a writer. And never touched his stuff ever again. Oh, you know what? I was wondering, why is this not adding what I wanted it to? And then I realized, duh, because I'm using the smear brush, not the paintbrush. Good job, Brandy. Good job. Excellent. There we go. Yeah, I will never forget. Just the ick factor that I got after reading it. And yes, I agree. The books are always better than the movies. Always worth watching. You know, it's one thing to watch it, and that's not on the movie producer necessarily, but it's more due to the nature of film versus the written. In a film, you can't, your reader, your watcher, your viewer, I should say, is going to get bored if you're constantly narrating what's going on in their head with nothing else going on. And there are some things you just can't do in a film that you can in a book without confusing the viewer. So it's not necessarily on the producers of the work, but doing film adaptation of a book is really hard and very difficult to keep the original kind of intent going. So mad respect to any director who can manage to pull it off. But, yeah. We'll go for about 5 more minutes here, and then we're going to take this short break and hop into Ubi's stream. And I definitely thank you guys for showing up and being with me here today. It does mean a lot to me when I have people to chat with. It's kind of the point. But I will say I would do this artwork even if, because technically the stream is really an excuse for me to do my art instead of, you know, just strictly focusing on other people's work, which is what I spend a lot of time doing. So I appreciate this ability to spend time with you guys and to just get my creative thing going on. And it should be in the chat if it is not, or not in the chat. It should be in the description if it is not. If you are interested in writing or learning anything about writing or in interactive fiction, well, you can always join me on my stream Saturday at 2 p.m. Central Time, where we do a interactive fiction. You guys get to make decisions that affect the main character and his outcome of his story. In fact, that story has gone bananas. Bananas, 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 bananas. And it's really crazy and a lot of fun. So I hope you'll consider joining us. And that looks pretty sprot cool. I'm liking it. Alrighty. And now our Technosavior is holding the world in his hand. Ugh. It somehow got crooked. I shall have to figure out how to straighten it out at some point in time. But it's okay. That is where we have ended up, fellows. Ladies and gentlemen. That circular object is the globe, Mr. Malachi. Thank you for asking. I should label it. But, you know, when people are looking at it visually on an album, they're not going to be able to... I'm not going to label it. So, hopefully it's a good enough rendition that somebody will be able to figure out what it's supposed to be. Alright. Again, thank you guys so much for joining me this evening. I really appreciate your time, your attention, and your willingness to stick with me through any technical difficulties we may have had. I am going to go ahead and come over here and pop in the writing and chatting stream link so that you can get your notification going if you choose to. Oh, you know what? It would really help. Yeah, there it is. Upcoming. Get shareable link. Pop that in the chat. Woohoo! Yep, you can set yourself a notification, and that way you know when the next one is. As far as the next drawing and chatting, or drawing and chilling, we will be doing that next Monday. Same as always, same time, 6:30 p.m. God willing and the creek don't rise. And thanks again for watching. If you are not already somebody who is a big fan of the Ubi, I highly recommend you check out his stream. Let's get that going on. Copy link address. This is the link to Ubi's stream. He does a 2-hour live stream on Mondays, which is music focused. Live guitar, really good stuff, and I hope you'll see you there. Thanks for watching, and see you either Saturday or next Monday.